The Tales of 1001 Nights. Night-3. The Story of the Ifrit and the Merchant. Part 3. When the third night had come, Scheherazade resumed the tale spoken by the old man, the keeper of the two black dogs, and she took up his narration from the hour when the eldest brother learned that the middle brother, having been accused of theft in a neighbouring city, stood in danger of losing the fingers of his hand as punishment. Without delay, he entrusted the shop and storerooms to the youngest brother, and, beneath the veil of night, set forth toward that city. The old man spoke thus.
As the dawn was about to break, I reached the city and went straightway to the house of the chief magistrate. When I stood before his gate, I beheld a woman waiting there. No sooner had she seen me than she said,
"What brings you to this place? And why are you not in your own shop?"
At first, astonishment seized me, but soon I recognized her as one of my most faithful customers, a woman who would often come with her daughter and who ever spoke of the long and weary road she traveled to trade with us. Therefore I answered her, saying,
"A calamity has overtaken my family, and for this cause I have come, hoping to speak with the magistrate and find relief."
She smiled with kindness and replied,
"Then know that this day is fortunate for you, for I am the wife of the magistrate. Speak plainly, and I shall see your matter set aright."
Thereupon I related to her the whole affair, sparing no detail. When she had heard me to the end, she said,
"Rest yourself for a while, and I shall speak with my husband. God willing, your trouble shall be resolved."
And indeed, through her intercession, all the stolen wealth was repaid in full, together with its due fine, and my brother was released and granted pardon. Taking him with me, I departed the city and turned homeward. Along the road, I kept my counsel, saying only how great was my joy at seeing him alive once more, and reminding him that from the morrow onward, the three of us would labour together to restore our father's trade. Thus we lived, and 4 full years passed over us. With diligence and unity we worked hand in hand, until our shop prospered greatly, and our commerce flourished beyond expectation. Each of us laid aside 1,500 gold coins. At that time I had reached the age of 30, while my brothers were 28 and 26. I deemed it fitting that we should now marry and bring new order to our lives. Yet my brothers opposed this counsel, and so the matter came to naught. The middle brother, in truth, was ever discontented, even in the midst of abundance. He would complain unceasingly, saying,
"How long shall we remain bound to petty trade? Why do we not journey to distant realms and engage in great commerce, so that we may amass far greater riches?"
He urged that we close the shop for a season and seek fortune in foreign lands. I remembered well how his former ambition had nearly cost him his fingers, and so I held my peace, hoping that time would cure him of this restlessness. But the youngest brother, though honest of heart, was easily swayed, and he joined his voice to the others' insistence. Neither would travel without me. They pressed me to accompany them. At length, worn down by their persistence, I yielded. I gathered the finest brocades, silks of great price, and perfumes of rare fragrance, and I added 500 gold coins for each of us. The remaining 3,000 coins I concealed for safekeeping. Then the three of us set forth upon a long journey in pursuit of great trade. For 6 years we wandered from kingdom to kingdom, buying and selling, and God granted us remarkable success. The wealth we carried grew tenfold, and we amassed a vast store of merchandise. Yet throughout those years, discord never left us. The middle brother and I quarrelled often, and the youngest ever took his side. At last, by my firm insistence, it was agreed that we should end our travels and return home with what we had gained. In our final dispute, the middle brother declared,
When we return, I shall take my share and depart, for I no longer wish to remain in the family trade.
The youngest vowed to follow him. Seeing that my words availed nothing, I agreed that upon our return we would divide the wealth, and each man might go his chosen way. 15 days had passed of our voyage by sea, a journey meant to last 30, when, as I walked upon the deck, I beheld a young woman sitting apart, clothed in garments torn and worn, her face bathed in tears. Moved by compassion, I approached her and asked the cause of her sorrow. With sighs and lamentations that pierced the heart, she told her tale so pitifully that my soul melted within me. I said to her,
What service lies within my power to render you?
Without hesitation, she answered,
Take me as your wife. I know that strife has risen between you and your brothers, and that you are alone even as I am. Let us be companions upon this perilous journey, for none knows what fate awaits us on the morrow.
Though her words struck me with wonder, I consented at once. On the following day, I asked the ship's captain to solemnize our union. I purchased for her garments of beauty and worth from the merchants aboard, and we dwelt in one of the finest cabins, intending to celebrate our wedding properly upon our return. Because of the bitterness between my brothers and me, they remained unaware of this marriage, though we all sailed upon the same vessel. 1 week passed in happiness, and but 1 week remained before we reached our home. I believed myself secure in joy and good fortune, but destiny had decreed otherwise. All the while, my brothers were weaving a dark design against me. One night, while I slept, they entered my chamber, bound my hands and feet, and with cold hearts cast me into the sea. I, who knew not how to swim, sank swiftly, surrendering myself to death. Yet in my final moments, I beheld my wife leaping from the deck into the waves. She loosed my bonds, bore me swiftly to a small island, and then vanished from my sight. When I recovered my breath, I knew this was no dream. I lay upon a lonely shore, and my heart burned with grief and astonishment.
How could my brothers repay all my kindness with such treachery? I saved them from ruin and shared all I possessed, yet they sought my death.
Still more did I marvel at how my wife had known of the plot, and by what power she had saved me. As I pondered these things, I beheld before me a sea spirit, whose countenance was the very likeness of my young bride. Struck speechless, I gazed upon her until she spoke, saying,
What you imagine is neither dream nor delusion. I am the woman you married, and I am your guardian spirit. I knew of your brother's treachery, and by this guise I drew near to you, that I might save you from death. Even now I stand ready at your command to destroy those who plotted against you.
I implored her, saying,
Though they betrayed me, they are still my brothers. I cannot bear to see them slain. Spare their lives, but chastise them, that they may learn the bitter lesson of ingratitude.
She took my hand and rose into the air. How long we travelled, I cannot tell, but suddenly I found myself standing before my own shop. I opened it, swept away the dust of absence, set all in order, and spoke a while with my neighbours. At sunset, I turned homeward, my heart filled with anxious thoughts of how my brothers would greet me, and with fear of the punishment my guardian had chosen for them. When I reached the house and found it clean and well kept, I knew that much time had passed and that my brothers had returned before me. I entered with a darkened brow, and there I beheld, to my amazement, 2 black dogs chained within the house. When our eyes met, I knew them for my brothers. They threw themselves at my feet, howling and weeping. Then the guardian spirit appeared and said,
Since you chose to spare their lives, I have transformed them into dogs, that they may guard you and your house. For 10 years they shall remain thus, until they learn what recompense follows treachery and ingratitude.
The old man bowed his head before the Ifrit and said,
Yes, O mighty spirit, as you behold, I wander the world with these 2 black dogs, who are none other than my brothers, journeying from land to land until the term of 10 years be fulfilled and they are restored to human form. I harbour no hatred in my heart toward them. Indeed, I love them dearly and long for the day when they may return to their former shape, that we may spend the remainder of our lives together in our Father's shop, working side by side as we once did.
When the Ifrit heard these words, he turned to the old man and said,
Your tale is wondrous and full of admonition. As agreed, I remit 1/3 more of this merchant's blood.
But before the Ifrit could speak further, another old man, mounted upon a mule, came hastening forward in great agitation and implored the Ifrit to grant him leave to relate his own story, in the hope that the final third of the merchant's life might also be spared. The Ifrit inclined his head in assent and thus permitted him to speak. Then the old man, the rider of the mule, began his tale in this manner.
This mule upon which you see me riding is in truth my wicked and faithless wife. I was once a merchant of immense wealth and renown, trafficking in spices, silks, jewels, provisions, and every manner of merchandise, carrying my goods from the farthest east to the distant west. My trading journeys would last a full year, and sometimes a year and a half, and upon my return I would rest for 6 months. I was childless and lived only with my wife and my aged mother. On one such journey, after more than a year away from home, I found myself in the market of a distant city, where I encountered an old friend, also a merchant and once our neighbor. Rejoicing greatly, I greeted him, and after exchanging news, my heart yearning for home, I asked him, "What tidings? How fares my house, and what has become of my family?" He gazed at me long and then said,
Alas, I bring you no glad news.
My heart trembled, and I urged him to speak. With sorrow he replied,
Your mother has passed from this world.
At this, my strength left me, and I fell to the ground in the midst of the market, weeping bitterly. When I had somewhat recovered, I asked, would that I had not, about my wife. He looked at me with wonder and hesitation, then said,
I know not whether your wife was always versed in sorcery or learned it after your mother's death, but she has taken into her service a hideous black slave, who by night steals young maidens from villages and towns and brings them to her. She renders them mute by magic and sells them as slaves to the captains of passing ships. Thus has she fashioned for herself a dark and accursed trade. The people of the city know her to be a dangerous sorceress and dare not speak against her. Some say she has even taught sorcery to the slave, and the presence of 2 magicians beneath one roof has cast terror upon the city.
Hearing this, I could not delay. I resolved to return at once, to deliver my people from this evil woman. I travelled night and day without rest until I reached my city. Straightway I went to my house, forced open the gate and entered the courtyard. There I saw my wife, holding the hand of a young girl, while beside her stood a powerful black slave, and before them a sailor with whom she was bargaining. When my wife saw me, she cried out to the slave to seize me. Then she came toward me with a bowl of water, muttering strange words beneath her breath, and sprinkled it upon me. In an instant, I was transformed into a dog, and the slave cast me into the street. Bewildered and despairing, I wandered through the alleys, drawn by hunger to the refuse heaps. Failing to find food, I at last found myself before a butcher's shop. The sight of red meat hanging from the hooks held me fast. The butcher, a kind-hearted man, noticed me and threw me a bone thick with flesh. I devoured it eagerly, and when I had finished, he gave me another, and then another. In gratitude, I rubbed my head against his legs and lay down before his shop. Until sunset, he fed me, and when he closed his shop and went home, I rose and followed him. He glanced back at me several times and smiled, seeming not displeased. When we reached his house, his daughter opened the door, and I entered after him into the courtyard. She gazed long into my eyes, then cried out in fear and wonder.
"This dog is the well-known merchant of our city, the husband of that accursed sorceress. If I do not break the spell at once, he will remain thus forever."
She hurried inside and returned with a bag of magical instruments. Sprinkling water upon me, even as my wife had done, she restored me to human form. When I stood once more as a man, she said, "You must punish your wicked wife and free both yourself and this city from her evil."
I replied, "I am ready to do whatever is required, but how shall I overcome her power?" She wrote strange words upon a parchment and gave me a flask of water, saying,
"Go to her while she sleeps. Recite these words and pour this water upon her head. Be swift and silent, for if she awakens, the spell will fail and your life will be forfeit. This enchantment shall transform her into a mule, bound to follow you for the rest of your days, and when you die, she shall die also."
That very night, knowing the slave had gone out to steal maidens, I entered my house in silence and did exactly as she commanded. Thus I turned my wicked wife into this mule you see before you. And since she had destroyed my honor in that city, I took a little food and water and departed forever, unknown to all. From that day until this, I have wandered from land to land with this mule, until destiny brought me to you.
When the third old man finished his tale, the Ifrit pondered for a time. Then he turned to the merchant and said,
This is the second bargain I have struck with the sons of Adam, yet I must remain faithful to my word. I spare your life. Depart from this land in safety."
The young merchant rejoiced greatly at the saving of his life, yet curiosity stirred within him. Turning to the Ifrit, he asked,
Was there, before us, another man who came to this land, and with whom you made such a bargain?
The Ifrit replied,
No, that tale belongs to ages long past, to the time of the prophet Solomon, and to what befell between me and an old fisherman.
And just as the Ifrit was about to recount his own story, Shahbaz, who had remained awake far into the night, could resist sleep no longer and fell into a deep slumber. Scheherazade, seeing this, withdrew joyfully to her chamber to rest and prepare herself for the fourth night. On the fourth night shall be told the beginning of The Story of the Ifrit and the Fisherman. Farewell.